Hi everyone, let's do a sketch in real time, start to finish, and see what happens. I'd like to thank my patrons for making this video possible, especially Joey. Joey, no one knows what the quantum wave function of the universe is, but I'm pretty sure it's you. All right, for materials, this is this paper, Strathmore drawing paper medium surface. This is different from the smooth bristle paper that I normally use, and that is because I need to do this fast if I want any hope of doing this in real time and completely without editing anything out. So let me I have no plan here, so I'm just gonna sketch out some unusual proportion of something. And I'm gonna do most of this drawing probably with black colored pencils. So this is a Faber-Castell black gold Faber pencil. I don't know the difference between these and these, but I use them both interchangeably. If I could only use one drawing tool to do complete drawings with, it would be black colored pencils. They go down nice and gray when they're light. They go darker than most graphite pencils when you press hard, and they resist smudging. But if you do want to smudge, if you do want to blend with them, you can press on them really frickin' hard and they will still blend. So I find them to be an unusually versatile tool. I like the Faber-Castells a little better than the more typical Prismacolors that you find around. And that's for a very simple reason, which is that I'm not sure technically about this, but I believe the binder is different in the pencils. The Faber-Castells use a oil-based binder, I want to say, instead of the wax that we're familiar with in most colored pencils. And that removes the problem of wax bloom when you press really dark on the colored pencil. Prismacolor pencils, when you press very hard for dark areas, the wax bloom is noticeable. You get this slightly flaky, cakey, very shiny effect on the paper. And it's not something you can't get around. And it's honestly not that big of a deal. But when other materials are available that avoid it, I feel like I might as well use those. It also makes it, in my opinion, in my experience, it makes it a little easier to blend them with graphite when they don't have the wax bloom. I haven't tried it much, but I've been frustrated in the few attempts that I have to put graphite over or under blooming Prismacolor. But these Faber-Castells that don't have the waxy residue, you can blend graphite in and out of them pretty easily. All I did here to prepare was I taped down the edges of my paper. And that's just so if I do go out to the edges of the sheet, there's a little bit of a finish, a little bit of an effect there. It seems like a small thing, but having even a minimalistic border on the edges of the paper will do a lot to make the drawing, abstract the drawing, make it look more finished, make it look intentional and planned, instead of it being sort of a sketch that got out of your control. It's really amazing. Literally just having a 1/2 inch border up around the top and bottom of your sheet will make something that's really quite sketchy otherwise feel like it was, planned and intentional, instead of being a sketch that needs to be transferred or redone somewhere, in my opinion. And that's basically all of the technical stuff that I have to talk about. So, well, if you're here on this channel, you're down with the art weirdness, right? So I'll see what comes up as I work the drawing. I'm going to give myself permission to be pretty silent here for some stretches. If you're going to use this as a drawing companion, if you want to draw along, please do. And buckle up because it's going to be a longer one. get your tools that you like nearby. Have them at the ready. Get yourself a drink, some coffee or tea, ayahuasca, whatever. All right, doing the initial sketch is definitely taking up a lot of my mental energy, so I'm just gonna run my mouth about stuff that's been going on with me lately. Let's see, what's been on my mind? My mentorship waitlist has gotten way too long. So maybe this will be of interest to anyone who has emailed me about it or is trying to get on that. At this point, if you were to get on the waitlist now, I probably have no hope of getting to teaching you within a year, you know? So I'll add you to the waiting list, but it's getting so unruly now that, yeah, I'm probably a year out for anybody that I add on, and that might be a year at least. So that's been not optimal for me. You know, I want to help a lot of the people who are messaging me. So I believe I'm going to launch some kind of summer workshop series, maybe sometime in May or something like that. I'm not 100% sure about the shape that that's going to take. I've bounced the idea off a few people who have recently messaged me trying to get mentoring or coaching. What I'm imagining is it's just a product that you can sign up for on my Gumroad store. So you just kind of check out with a cart. And if you can get it while there's still slots left, I think it'll be a class-like environment of a limited number of students, maybe 10. In my experience, 10 students is sort of the sweet spot where I can give everyone individual attention, but it's very hard for me to teach the way that I like to teach. The way that I teach with 10 students takes me like 4 to 5 hours to teach everybody in the class for a session. That's a very long time. So I really am not sure about going much higher than that, right? I would really be unsatisfied with going way out from that, because it's going to get unruly. I'm not going to be able to focus on everybody individually. So I'm thinking 10. And sorry, I had to focus there for a minute while I sketched an arm. I'm thinking 10, and when you sign up, it'll be for probably 4 consecutive Saturdays. So 4 long sessions, probably 4 hours each. In my experience, whenever I've done this in like the college teaching environment or anything like that, it'll go over, you know. I get really involved, you know. Especially when people bring me work and have things that they've put effort into, I react strongly to that, and I want to get into things with people and give them feedback and really ask them where they're landing and how they're feeling. And it takes a while. It takes a long time, especially while doing demos and all of that. But I think it would be a lot of this that goes on in the class, doing live drawing demonstrations, things like that. I will focus the classes most likely on traditional drawing. So people who want to improve their pencil work, people who want to do illustrations, figurative work, really the kind of stuff that you see me do here on the channel. I'm absolutely open to instructing on digital work and design work, of course, but we probably could do that in any workshop because I'm going to try to tailor everything very individually, but I can also imagine doing those as separate units where there's different focuses in those things. But it's been a while since I've been able to focus down and teach what I know about using a pencil on paper, and I sure would like to do that. So yeah, if this sounds of interest to you, do reach out, drop me a line or say something in the comments just so I can gauge how many people are into that kind of environment for this kind of a thing rather than one-on-one, because that'll help me plan for it, give me the necessary motivational conditioning factors to actually go through and run the unit. And just to be completely honest, because that's what we do on this channel, it's like, no one is going to be able to teach you, for example, everything you need to know about figure drawing or using a pencil or doing illustrations or even any of the fundamentals, right? Like, you're never going to learn everything you need to know about composition or values or anything like that in 4 weeks or even 8 weeks or 10 weeks or anything like that. That's not something, no one's ever going to be able to teach you everything that you need to know about a fundamental like perspective or figure drawing or using a pencil. No one's ever going to be able to teach you that in 4 weeks, in 8 weeks, 10 weeks, anything, right? No one can hand you that stuff. You need to put in the work to understand those things yourself, and it can take a different amount of time. It will take a different amount of time for every person. So really the way that I want to run these workshops is, well, actually make it a workshop, which a lot of these kinds of things often are not. I want you to work, right? And I want it to feel like an environment that is less, I'm here to glean a secret or a particular ability, right? I will help you with whatever you want to know, right? I will give you as many tips as you in whatever area as I have, but it's really about the environment, right? Like, think of it as 4 weeks where you have a structure and you have the help, not just of myself, but of the other students, right? And if you sign up for this, you'll of course get access to a Discord for your unit. So everybody will be able to talk and you'll be able to ask me questions, not just during class, right? You'll have access to me in between the classes on Discord to sort of answer your questions in between sessions for the weeks in between sessions. And you'll be able to, we've discussed so many times how important it is to have some sort of network, to have community, to know other students and to try other things with them and to know each other and to help each other out and give each other tips and eventually hire each other. All that stuff is very, very important. So this would be a way to do that as well and to build some community. But the actual sessions themselves are, well, we're going to do a lot of philosophizing. Surprise, right? Like, what I really, truly, I'm not on here saying all this stuff because I don't think it matters. I do think this stuff is actually the most important stuff in the art journey. So we're going to talk a lot about, what are you doing? Why are you doing it? What is influencing you? Why do you think this is the thing you should do? Why do you think this is the kind of thing that you shouldn't do? And we're going to try to, well, I don't know, break a lot of that stuff down so that it's not in the way of the actual use of the technical stuff that we do get to cover, right? I mean, technical advice and concrete tips and structuring of how you're going to pursue your practice is really only useful if you actually have the mental state to do it, right? And the mental state is quite tricky. You need to have trust in yourself and faith in what you're doing to be able to follow through and sit there and do these things, because no amount of tips ever makes it easy, right? No amount of techniques, no amount of secrets ever makes the actual follow through easy. If it was, the vast majority of people's art journeys would already be easy because there is a wealth of tips and advice and tutorials out there. And guess how much they do for people? Not that much. Not that much. It is about feeling confident in yourself, feeling unified with the direction that you are taking your work in. And yeah, I mean, confidence and understanding and self-trust are really, they're the name of the game here. And they're stuff that artists are often really short on. So we will focus on that. As kind of embarrassing as it is for me to say out loud, and as aware as I am that that is stuff that people can cringe away from, that's what I want to help with. You know, that is really what I want to help with. There's some part of me that still feels ashamed, right? Like, Steven, shut up. Why are you trying to, people just want help on how the hell do you hold the pencil, right? That's all people want. That's what they want advice on. That's what they want to understand. And that would be the best help that you could give them, right? Some shallow, horrified part of me is always telling me that. But when I think it through, I don't believe that, you know? I don't think that's really it. I think that, yeah, these mental roadblocks from my experience and talking to people, they are really 99% of the battle. And I feel like there's very few environments to talk to people about that stuff face to face. You know, there's so many weird traps and blockages in the art journey that a lot of people don't even feel like they can talk to their parents about this stuff, right? Or their best friends, because they're afraid that it makes them sound untrustworthy, or like, oh my God, you're wasting all your time thinking about this impossible career. It's like, please just go make money for your family or whatever, right? Like, it turns out that so many weird blockages can arise in the art journey that, yeah, a lot of people find themselves with absolutely nobody to talk to. And it's super cringeworthy to say that, like, look, when we run this workshop, we're going to make sure it's a place where you can talk about these things. But I think it's important. I really think that that's really a lot of what this is. And I won't cringe away from it. You know, again, there's a big part of the drawing world that really despises that, you know, that really thinks that it's sort of pretentious, or really pretentious, presumptuous, and self-aggrandizing to think that you can help someone with that or give them advice with that. And the advice you should give them is just, what hardness of lead should you use? And to that I say, no, screw it. I don't agree. And if I sound nuts, well, fine. All right, let's throw some clear shadow shapes on this overall sketch that I did here. I'm using this different paper because it's rough, because for fast work, in my opinion, rough paper it's easier to achieve a finish on it, or to get a slightly more finished look. If you are compromising on the right things, that is. So on rough paper, you'll see when I do areas like this, because the paper is so rough and so toothy, when I veil with my pencil, that is to say doing little circles like this to shade, that's called veiling traditionally, it blends together better. The paper is rough enough that the individual hatches have a harder time showing up. And that creates a more efficient edge hierarchy for a fast finish, because you're not throwing hard edges around everywhere. If you were doing this on smooth bristle paper, for example, that would be much more of a problem, because every little stroke that you put down is going to show up crisp and clear on the bristle paper. And then that's going to mean that every texture that you do, every patch of value that you do is going to be made up in totality. Whatever its totality is, it's going to be made up of hard edges, very little soft edges. And that means that if you want, and you surely will want, sharper, detailed edges in your focal point compared to everywhere else in the drawing, you are going to need to fight against that in most parts of the drawing in order to make the contrast hierarchy of value and edge and detail and attention pan out to finish the drawing. Now, the benefit of that on a smooth paper is that the amount of sharpness available to you for that finish is higher than it is on a paper like this. That's the price that you pay, having to police the edge hierarchy much more precisely everywhere else on the drawing. That's the price you pay to be able to have a higher ceiling on just how crisp you can get in resolution in the focal point. So if you like that, for example, as I do, then you pay the price and you spend much longer on the drawings. It's really hard to make fast drawings look good on smooth paper. But if you're not going to have time to resolve all those edge issues, why not go for a rougher paper like this that lets things blend and fall together a little bit easier and get to some kind of holistic edge and value hierarchy quicker. It definitely helps for the values as well, because a nice dark pencil like this on a rough paper goes to black much quicker than it would on a smooth paper. There's enough tooth on the paper that it grabs more graphite. You can see here on this leg value that I put down, this is quite halftony. No? If you're familiar with halftone, the effect that you might see in comic books or newspaper printing or something like that, that's really what's going on here, which is a little bit different feeling than what happens on smooth paper. These values, it's almost like a good clear black is going down, but it's the spaces between every little bit of black dust that is creating the modulation in values. Have you ever seen like a bitmap image up close where it is all pure black and white, but you get the full range of values out of it when you pull back just from the space in between those black and white dots? That's sort of the effect that I'm talking about. More is available here because it is not pure black and pure white that's going down. It is going down in grays, but the halftone effect is noticeable, and I think you can see it in areas like this. It does blend things together slightly better. So whatever material you're using, you've got to use its limitations and its nature to your advantage. You're going to be on a rough paper that makes it difficult to get high resolution details right away. Well, go for the value read, right? Go for volumes, like the volume that I'm describing right now. Are you going to be on a smooth paper where it becomes more difficult to make things run together and to get softened or lost transitions between parts of the drawing? Well, either spend way longer, plan to spend way longer, or do drawings that are really leaning into how hyper attention grabbing the hatching is. Work well within your limits. I imagine a lot of stuff like that is the kind of stuff that we'll go over in these weekend workshops that I hope to do. So in any given area, my usual process is to put down a nice, clear, crisp shadow shape. So you can see it here on the bottom of this leg, right? It's a snaky, spiky, sinuous shape that runs down the whole form there. And the nature of that shape is not determined by, it is determined by anatomical features, for sure, but it's also arbitrary. It's also made up. There's no perfect answering your way to what kinds of shapes you should have where on the figure. That isn't real. It's taste, pure taste. I've developed my taste for those shapes by looking at a lot of photographs and live models and doing a lot of life drawing and copying a lot of other people's art. And while I was doing it, I was always asking myself, well, what's my taste here? Do I like that shape or this shape? Do I like this shape or that shape? And then once I had a gut feeling, oh, I think I like this one better, then why? What kinds of shapes do I like? I like aggressive shapes. I like sharp, clear shapes, but that's not what everyone should be into. For your type of art, it might be more appropriate to do round, soft shapes or low contrast shapes or very homogeneous shapes where you're sort of repeating the same shape design everywhere in the picture so that it feels less attention grabbing, your shadow shapes, and also unifies all of the elements in the picture. There's all sorts, an infinite variety of tastes that you can do or have. And the art journey is really about breaking up for yourself, well, what do you like and why? And then having the confidence to roll with that and to follow through with that and investigate that instead of getting distracted thinking that you know that you should be into something else or be better at this or instead be moving away from this stuff that you like because it's not the taste of the current era or it doesn't work well in the particular social media environment that is out in the world right now, or any of that classic crap, those classic downfalls that all artists fall into at some point or another. You know, I had a long journey with that stuff myself, you know? I mean, when I was in my skill building phase, going to school, trying to get my first jobs, trying to get my feet under me, that was all very much in the era where, like, I was around when Instagram hit, you know? Like, I remember Instagram launching and hearing about it for the first time and seeing, not knowing at first, like, oh, is this going to be a place for art? And then finding out and watching it grow and develop and, you know, people telling each other like, man, you got to launch an Instagram, you know, like that's really where people are looking at art these days and things like that. I remember that and other things, you know, I've been around just long enough now to notice cycles of things becoming fads and defining the culture and sort of defining why people make work and how. And the first time, before I sort of had eyes on it, the first time that it happened, it really put a lot of pressure on me, you know, like it was pretty clear what kind of stuff worked for Instagram, right? Like almost inevitably, no matter what you did, no matter what style, no matter how refined your work, how skillful, someone with the same skill level, let's say that there's no difference between skill levels, or it's the same person posting two different pieces. If one was a full body and one was a head, just the portrait, 9 times out of 10, the portrait would get more attention. And that was just because you could see it better, because Instagram shows everything, if you're lucky, 2 inches wide on a cell phone screen. And there was a lot of pressure then to just be like, all right, well, I'm the kind of person who likes to do very flat, very not cropped, full body things. And that stuff, just the details don't hold up at that size. And that caused me a lot of turmoil early on when I was coming up and going through figuring out what the heck I should be sharing and what my voice was and all of that. That caused me a lot of turmoil. Eventually, I did get my head on straight and realize that you should never, ever, 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 even for a second, ever give a crap about any of that stuff. Do not let the random choices of some computer geniuses define what kind of art you make. And then once I got that, I got much happier and really enjoyed making art a lot more and making my own art. And it opened up the gates for me to actually figure out what the heck I was interested in. And I just didn't worry about it. And it did hurt me, right? It did hinder me. I mean, it didn't change the fact that, yeah, really nobody can see your work, Steven, on Instagram. You do these very detailed little drawings that don't hold up the best on cell phone screens. And they don't look their best, and you're not one of the absolute best in the world, so you're always going to fight an uphill battle on that, right? You're not taking advantage of everything that you could because you're simply unwilling. So it did hamper me, but once I got over caring that was the case because my priorities were sort of elsewhere, that made things a lot easier on me. And then, things changed, right? Here I am on YouTube. And YouTube is much better for the kind of work that I like to do than Instagram was ever going to be, right? I mean, it's quite possible that you watching me draw right now, you're watching this going almost all the way across your screen, which might be something like 15 to 27 inches wide. That's much better for viewing detail-oriented, powdery work that lives in its textures and all the little flecks and dots and things like that. That's much better for looking at work like this than something like a cell phone is ever going to be. And I didn't get that when I started YouTube. I actually started YouTube because I wanted to talk, and I didn't piece together in my head that YouTube's format was actually going to be better for my artwork. I could have, but I didn't. It wasn't really on my radar. I had sort of stopped caring at all how people were. I had stopped dreaming for an ideal way to share my work, so it just wasn't on my radar. And yeah, I didn't put it together until after I'd done many videos. Like I had literally made like 40 videos before it hit me. And I was like, oh my God, yeah, no, this is like the much better format for the stuff that I like to draw. I really didn't get that. I was focused on Jesus, like I really want to talk about art, and I've had a weird mental blockage for years where I thought that to include the enjoyment that I get out of speaking, right? To include the thoughts and the thinking and the sharing about the art journey, to include that with the art was to somehow make it impure, right? I had this very weird blockage for a very long time that, how to put it, I thought if people are going to like my work, right? If people are going to know my work and know my drawings and like my art, it must be only for the art, right? I developed this complex. This is what this was. I developed this complex when I was in college, I think, because I've always had an easy time presenting my work for like critique and to talk about it and to do presentations of projects and things like that. I've never had trouble with that. I've always had an easy time, just by chance, just by temperament, getting up there in front of a group of people and talking and explaining and making it, not horribly boring, trying to be somewhat entertaining and understanding the mechanics of a variety of vocal inflections and reading the room and gauging energy. All that stuff sort of came kind of naturally to me. And because it came naturally, when I saw that I was going through a period, right, which now is understandable, but back then I didn't like it. I was going through a period where my ability to talk about my work and share it far surpassed the quality of my work itself. And it wasn't long before that became a complex where I felt really insecure about that. I was like, I don't want anyone to like my work just because I can sort of, in a silver-tongued bastard kind of way, talk my way out of any hole with it, right? I want people to like it because it's good on their own. I don't want my personality or my thinking about it associated with it at all. Does that sound nuts? It is nuts. But we're artists. We find lots of crazy reasons to hate and hurt ourselves. That's one of the things artists are best at. So that was how I did it. And I fell into that trap for years and years and years. And when I got out of that trap, thanks to a very interesting and profound experience of crawling out of my own ass, I immediately knew that, oh God, I've just been shooting myself in the foot, and I need to do what I really have always liked to do with my friends and include this in my practice and talk about art and write about art and share about art and share this whole secondary process that I've secretly been running my whole life, where I have been engaged in a side practice of how the heck do I manage my emotions and my thought processes while I do art. No easy task, and as many things are learned in that realm as they are in the actual art making. And I've had as many conversations with other artists and my peers and my best friends about that as anything technical or how the heck to actually make a good picture. I've had an equal amount, if not more, conversations about the feelings, the experiential portion of this. And yeah, it was a beautiful thing to actually start incorporating that in my life. And here we are, drawing demons and talking about feelings. Naturally, that's where we have arrived. Drawing demons and talking about feelings. All right, how am I going to do this? I wanted to do some weird, like, wide proportion thing on the hips here. I don't actually have a great way to resolve it. But let's just plow through. And that's the weird thing about doing an unplanned drawing, right? Is that I sketched this in probably I don't remember, I wasn't looking at the clock, but I sketched this in probably a few minutes. And then just the way drawing goes, you will throw down some errant little lines in just a few minutes, often less than half an hour. That half hour of groundwork is going to be the rails that you then spend hours, possibly 100 hours or more, finishing. Which is odd when you think about it, right? And it's especially odd to think about our willingness to allow that to happen. We get very sloppy and we're just like, yeah, well, I get impatient if I spend more than a half hour to an hour on the line drawing before I can get into it. And it's like, yeah, you're impatient about that, but you expect yourself to be patient for then working on those half-hour lines for 100 hours. Something's a little crazy there. And I fell into that trap for this session. I've been trying to avoid it, to spend a little bit more time on my setups, not necessarily planning, not like thumbnails or anything like that, but just slowing down for the initial lines. I've been trying to do that a little bit better. But camera on, looking for stuff to talk about. Of course, you're gonna forget about stuff like that. I thought it might be interesting to do this for a couple reasons. Well, most obvious at all, I was like, oh, well, I'm not going to have a video in just a couple hours. That's pretty good. And the other one was that I've had a few people asking me if I could do a whole process start to finish, show a whole drawing start to finish, or do longer form content as well. And this is a way to, well, it's certainly longer form, just because just because it's real time. So this will be much more in the realm of hours than the usual video. But it does also show the process for a whole drawing, or at least it shows that there's nothing special, right? I'm literally just drawing away over every part of the drawing. Let me readjust my camera here slightly. Getting a little overexposed there. So yeah, doing it in real time here and just going from start to finish on a sketch hopefully shows that there is nothing special. I can't realistically show the whole process for one of my really finished drawings. They just take much too long. You know, they take somewhere in the realm of something like my piece Fallen, for example. It takes much more in the realm of 100 hours than something like this, which will only be, you know, between one and a couple. And there's just that's unshareable. You know, there's literally no way to do that, showing it real time and just sharing the whole process. Even if I speed it up, 30x, it's unwatchable, right? So unfortunately, I have no realistic answer to anybody who wants to see the complete process for doing one of the very elaborate pieces. Those, as far as I know, those are really only practical in the way that I have posted them, which is to pick particularly interesting parts of the drawing process to record and only show those bits. And even then, it still winds up usually getting sped up instead of showing those pieces in real time. And I can maybe find stuff to talk about for an hour or two real time while I draw, but trying to find something to say for 100 hours of real time drawing would, it wouldn't be long before I was reading you my grocery list. And that's privileged information. You don't get to know that. I know you're interested. I know you wouldn't find that boring, but I'm not just going to sit here and share some of the juiciest stuff that I have for no reason and for free. Like, you're not going to pay me to tell you what I eat? Yeah, I think not. So all I'm doing right now is with this dark, soft colored pencil, I am filling in, not filling in, but creating with these soft volumes the big, right now, horizontal form rolls. So I'm looking for shelves, right, where the bicep plunges down from its bulge back down into the arm here. This whole area right here is in this light system where generally the light is coming from above. That's a down plane, right? So just do a ribbon across. Same with the deltoid. This whole under area of the deltoid, this lower area is a down plane, ribbon across. Where these ridge muscles insert into the rest of the forearm, down plane, ribbon across. And then I will mix that later on with vertical ribbons of shadow. So same here, right? Just imagine this bulge of the bicep, it goes under here, right? So ribbon of value across, thinking shelves, stair stepping. Same here. Again, I can do this relatively quickly because I'm on a rough paper. If I was on a sharp paper, that is to say a smooth paper, I would need to go much more delicately when doing these little soft value areas, because the sharp paper will hold razor sharp edges on all of these hatch lines all over the place. And that will blow the contrast hierarchy. There will be attention grabbing crap everywhere and that'll make it very hard to ever make the drawing look finished. Drawings looking finished is not really about detail, right? Detail is too fuzzy a word anyway. Drawings looking finished are about scale of forms in the drawing. So there needs to be, in some spot of the drawing, usually the focal point, there needs to be the complete scale of form, resolution, and love. So there needs to be primary shapes, secondary shapes, and tertiary shapes. I think of them as forms: primary forms, secondary forms, and tertiary forms. So it's not just shapes, it's that if the drawing is meant to feel 3D and realistic, that 3D realistic feeling must be occurring on the big shapes, the medium shapes, and the small shapes in at least one part of the drawing. And then everything else needs to fall off from that. The other thing that is required to make a drawing feel finished is the contrast hierarchy of attention needs to be in place. So that one spot has the scale of forms, and then everywhere else in the drawing respects that is the most resolved area, and everything else is slightly less resolved. And it can also feel finished if they're the exact same resolution everywhere. What keeps a piece from feeling finished is if an area that is noticeably unimportant and detracts and is not a useful focal point, is not the real focal point in the picture. If an area like that has more resolution and detail and interest and contrast than the focal point, for some reason, and the philosophy of this can be debated eternally, that makes it impossible for a piece to feel finished. It will always feel like it was caught at some awkward middle step, and that resolution still needs to be achieved. So ironically, and a lot of you who've been doing professional work have probably experienced this before, if you find yourself in that situation and you don't have any more time, right? You're out of time, you're on your deadline, but you have found yourself in that situation where something unimportant has broken the contrast hierarchy, has more contrast of values, has sharper edges, has more details than the area that is the real focal point. You can actually finish the piece by moving backwards and removing detail from that one area. It's like magic. Give it a try if you ever find yourself in that situation. You only need to fix a picture once by doing that before you realize that finish has absolutely nothing to do with the amount of labor or resolution or anything like that. Finish is simply a function of balance. Are the details and the interest balanced in the way that aligns with the point of the picture? Once you've made your point and the point is reinforced in the contrast hierarchy of the picture is done. It is donezo. And the audience will feel it as done. Dog, what are you doing? I hear you scraping over there. What are you eating? Puppies. Newborn pups. They don't know what to chew on and what not to chew on. All right, going to try to make these weird middle stretching skin fold areas feel interesting hopefully feel interesting by drawing them mostly with textural marks. So hatching, dots, wrinkles. Oh, I should say, since this is something about the way I work that is maybe a little unusual. I don't really do sketches anymore. Not for my personal work. Obviously, when I'm doing client work, I just do literally whatever needs to get done to finish the job and to do it the way that the client wants. That's different. But for me, when I'm working for me, yeah, I don't do sketches anymore. Thumbnails don't cut it for me. The abstract arrangement that's visible in a thumbnail lately is just not enough access to a picture for me to evaluate if it's actually good or not. So what I do is really something like what you're seeing me do here. This is my thumbnail. This is my very first sketch, my throwaway, my nothing for an idea. This is my thumbnail. So I don't think of it in terms of thumbnails anymore. I think of my process is really more of like attempts. So first attempt, second attempt, they teach me things, and then there's a final performance. You know, I've done enough rehearsals, and now it's time to do it for real. And the first attempt is really interesting because its only goal with my first attempt is to find out what the heck I'm actually interested in drawing, right? So that's why I do them sort of as full-on sketches that are like at scale and things like that. The reason I do that is because I could be triggered to like a drawing for any reason in the drawing vocabulary, right? So I might like a drawing for its gesture. I might like a drawing for its values. I might like a drawing for its textures. I might like a drawing for its graphic shapes. I might like a drawing for its anatomy. I might like a drawing for its weird little emphatic form area that I find. I might literally decide to do a 100-hour drawing that is a big, complete drawing just because I know there would be a little nicety of form where like a furrow overlaps an eye. That's enough for me. You know, I just need to, I'll do that. You know, I'm crazy enough to do a 100-hour drawing for one pinky size moment in the middle of it that takes me only 10 minutes to draw. Like that part's done in 10 minutes, and the 100 hours goes into earning that moment in the rest of the drawing, right? That's the kind of person I am. That's the kind of artist I am. I know I'm nuts, but that's just what does it for me, right? And the sweating, self-evaluating, sad little game of like, oh, am I good enough at thumbnails that this thumbnail is worthy? And I know that now this can be a picture, and I sure did plan it right. Like everybody tells me to do, is like, bleh, boring. God, no, I have no interest in that. That's just not, that ain't for me, you know, not for my work, at least, not for the stuff that I want to spend my fun, free time doing. You know, it's different for client work. Like I said, I'll do that for client work, but not for me. So I don't do it. And the attempts work out better for me because, like I said, I might decide to do a drawing for any damn reason, and that can occur. That reason can exist in any part of the drawing vocabulary. So that reason can be found in the very beginning, the stuff that might be captured in a thumbnail, or if it's something like texture, that is really a part of the vocabulary that is never going to show up in a thumbnail. That is part of the vocabulary that is only visible in a full-on, full-scale, basically finishable drawing, right? So I give up on thumbnails. Now I just do this. I do attempts. So I will just sit here for a couple hours, which is really nothing in the long run, right? In the long run, that is absolutely zilch, zero, nada. And I will just draw it as if, fuck it, you know, with no plan. It could be anything. It could be finished drawing. It could be a not finished drawing, whatever. I have no expectations. I'll just draw it and see what happens. And that first attempt will often reveal to me what that thing is. I will accidentally bump into an interaction of form, a texture, a particular gestural squiggle, an arabesque of decoration, a borderline psychotic composition choice. I'll find something like that. And that will be it, right? I'll be like, that's it. That interests me. I will make a picture just for the sake of that one thing. And then usually the way that that thing arose in the picture is unsatisfactory. It's like for it to be the emphasis of the picture, for it to be the whole reason for the picture, it might be too small. Or if it's an interaction of form, all of the other forms around it have not been designed to emphasize that form. You know, they're overpowering it, or they don't flow together, or things like that. So I then look for what is unsatisfactory in this first blush attempt about that thing that I like, and then I will take that into the second attempt, and I will rearrange, recompose, rescale everything such that hopefully it emphasizes and reinforces the one thing that now I know that's why I'm doing this picture, right? So they usually do become significantly different from doing that. But all of that to say, those are sketches. That's what I like to do, but I'm just not doing them small anymore. I just do them like full-on, full-blown drawings, which is lucky for me. You know, it's lucky that I'm fast enough these days that I can do that. You know, it's lucky that I'm quick enough when I draw that I can sort of do a, you know, this is a, what is this, a 14 by 17? Yeah, I can do a 14 by 17 as my sketch, right? It's lucky that I'm fast enough to do that, but it's also really good rehearsal, right? Because drawing bigger, drawing at scale is practice for itself, right? So I'm getting a lot of mileage for executing the process of drawing at the size that I'm trying to do finals at, which is very useful as well. That increases the rate at which I can resolve things. So for example, let's say that what I liked about this drawing was, and I don't know yet what I like about this drawing, but let's say that what I do wind up liking is like the unusual wideness at the hips, right? The weird proportional breaking the pelvis and stretching it out. If that's what I like, and as I'm resolving this first pass, I find, as we usually tend to, that I sure thought I made them wide enough to make that point when I first did the sketch, but it turns out as I rendered everything up, it actually like kind of loses its punch. They don't really look all that far apart, but I do know now that I like it and that would be worth doing a drawing over. Then I would scrap this, start over on a completely fresh sheet, and I would try to double or triple that proportional difference and like get the hips all the way out here or something like that. And then I'll recompose for all of that. You know, so much of, there's no rules in composition, right? The only actual quote unquote rule in composition is what composition is. It's the goal. It's what the heck do you actually think this is about, right? Composition is just have an opinion about what your picture is about and then do everything you can think of to make that clear to the audience, right? Do whatever you can to hit them over the head with this picture is about this, right? And that becomes ever more complicated as you have ever more complicated and nuanced answers to what is this picture about, right? You can actually go downright crazy, go down some pretty crazy rabbit holes with what a picture might actually be about. And that requires pretty crazy solutions to compositional questions. But that is composition. That's really all composition is. The rules of composition are really only guidelines based on, generally, if you think your picture is about this compositional trick will emphasize and reinforce the idea that it is about that. That's all those rules really are. So you're free to have completely different opinions about, well, A, what picture should be about, right? Not every picture has to be about the face in the picture. You know, if there's a tree in the middle of a field in a landscape, not every picture needs to then, even if that is the content, that doesn't mean that every landscape picture with a tree in the middle of the landscape has to be about that tree. You can instead say, well, this one has that tree, but it's about the grass or it's about the clouds. And you need to recompose and change the contrast hierarchies for those elements instead. And that is the real dance of composition. So when I do first attempts, second attempts, first attempt tells me or gives me my opinion, makes it possible for me to form my opinion about what the heck is this actually about? What do I think this design is actually about? What do I think this picture is actually about? And then the second pass is attempting to then recompose the picture with that in mind, as if I knew what I was doing the whole time, and emphasize that in the way that I compose the whole picture. Try to make things lead into that. Try to make design elements dance around that. Using these rougher papers is really fun for drawing form and texture at the same time. Really hard to do on a super slick surface. By way of explanation, if I, in an area like this, for example, if I start, instead of just rendering softly the overall form of this lower area of the forearm, for example, instead of rendering that all slow and then building texture up into it, I can actually work with the texture I want to put there. Let's say it's these oblong shape, circular or elliptical little welt patterns, right? If I do shapes like this, and with the help of the paper, they blend together a little better, they don't pull too much contrast, I darken them as they move out towards the edges, or they move away from the light, and give them variety and snake their rhythms around the imagined anatomical shapes in this area, and have them lighten considerably as they go to the middle of the form. I get to communicate form, right? I'm still communicating the roundness of this area of the forearm while capturing the texture. The halftone effect does both jobs at once. And that's really fun. Really fun and efficient and cool and happy and good feelings. And babada beat-up, badada bop, bop. A little harder to do that on super crisp paper. You just get so much action on the individual lines on super crisp paper that it will distract. If you put that stuff down really boldly and dark early on really crisp paper, it makes it really hard to get the form to pop off and be interesting and contrasty enough for the audience to give a damn about it. Oh yeah, I'll just do a sketch in real time, start to finish for my YouTube. I'll just do it real quick. Yeah, 4 hands. Yeah, sure. Yeah. Good idea, Stephen. So all just big, soft value shapes. To block everything in here. Just trying to hit the initial work amount that is necessary to make anything feel like anything. There's just a certain threshold where it's like, if you don't put this number of strokes over everywhere in the drawing, it's just not going to feel like you actually drew it. So it's perfectly valid to just try to hit that first and then assess everything after that. And just say, all right, well, when this thing would be done, if it's ever going to get done, it would have work everywhere, right? So just go around and try to make some marks and do a little bit of work, dump a little bit of your time into every part of it, and let that be the beginning of the picture, and don't worry about it so much, and then see what happens after you have that stuff down. All right, how long have we been going here? All right, an hour. Now it's time to get into inside baseball. All the dilettantes have left, right? Only people who are left here now are serious people who are really drawing. Now that they washed out, we can get to some real talk. All right, so I did a video recently. I believe the title was "What It Takes to Be a Professional Artist," right? And I was amazed how strong the reaction was to the ending of that video. Sort of little fake out that I did where it seemed like it had ended. And then I jumped back in to give a little follow-up note about how hard you need to work to be a professional artist. I was a little amazed that people latched onto that so hard, and it seemed people really liked it for how competitive it felt. You know, there was a lot of comments that were like, I needed that bit of competition and I'm coming to get you, and thank you for that. I needed that kick in that ass. I needed that kick in the ass. I haven't been working hard enough. That was the intention, kind of, right? But the sheer amount of people for whom that resonated was really unexpected. And I find that a little amazing when I had just spent the 10 minutes before that unbroken trying to remind people that the most important thing is not competition, but that you be enjoying what you're doing, right? Like everything else kind of be damned. Not to mention if you factor in the sheer amount of dozens of hours across all the content on this channel to remind people that is really what is important here. I was a little amazed that still, as soon as people heard the sort of, I don't know how to describe it, like the competitive motivational stuff that is really sort of pretty common everywhere. As soon as they heard that, still, they were like, yeah, hell yeah, let's do it. Oh, I'm coming to get you. It's like, yeah, you know, if you're going to be a pro, yeah, you do need that. But yeah, don't forget to have fun. Don't forget to dump that competitiveness whenever you need to. You know, there's an energetic rush available from joy and relaxation as well. there's plenty of reason to want to draw 10 hours a day from how relaxing and fun and experimental it is. That's there too. You know, there's definitely a tendency to be motivated by unwise things in the art world. You know, and it's all balance, right? Because I was certainly motivated by competition for a long time. So I can't in good conscience say that it's not useful or even necessary on the path, right? I don't now in hindsight think it's necessary, but I'm not really in a position to make that claim strongly because I didn't do my journey without competition. I had plenty of competitive thirst on my journey, but let's not forget that there are motivations that are a little less exhausting and capable of setting you up for horrible disappointment as well. That's really my problem, is that, you know, I'm going to sharpen my pencils here for a second. So that's really my problem with competition as a motivating factor. If it becomes too prominent, competition sets you up for really painful failures, because competition is naturally comparative, right? You're naturally competing against someone, even if you're just competing off of the energetic rush of hearing someone like me say, I'll draw circles around you. Like, even that, it's like you're still going to compare yourself, right? And it's probably going to at least open the doors for you to compare yourself more to your peers and people around you and things like that. And some people are really good sports, right? Some people can do that in a healthy way, where they sort of have the enlightened self-control that the second that gets out of balance, they can cut it off, right? They're not drinking their own Kool-Aid. The second the competitiveness makes them a little upset or neurotic or makes them judge themselves hardly, the second that happens, they just nix it. They're like, ha ha ha, I'm in control of my own emotions and I can just stop that now and go back to joyful peace. But, you know, I feel like that's less common than the people who are going to judge themselves more harshly while in the throes of that competitive rush. So if you're not the kind of person who can control themselves so strongly when it comes to an emotion as driving as competition, yeah, I think it sets you up for really painful failures later on down the line. And that can make you bitter, upset, sap your energy. On the other hand, to feel motivated by, making art is incredibly relaxing and I can practice and improve even while being very relaxed and very joyful and experiencing a freedom of mind and emotional affect and dissolution of my problems and my imagined sense of self. If those are your motivations, those don't set you up for painful anything, right? I mean, you can fail as much as you want and there's no connection from that. There's no connection from that stance to your failures, right? Whereas on the other hand, from the competitive mindset, there's nothing but connections to your failures. If you're in the very competitive mindset, when you don't reach your goals, when you don't do a great drawing, it's like the most obvious low-hanging fruit there is to be like, well, I'm not working as hard as them. I'm not being disciplined enough with myself. I'm not being harsh enough with myself. I have to set higher expectations for myself. Don't I want a better life? I've got to be able to achieve this. Other people can do this. I can too. What? I deserve all the same things as everybody else because I can earn all the same things as everybody else. I can work just as hard as everybody else and everybody get out of my way. And before you know it, you've compressed yourself into a black hole and you're sailing silently through the cosmos. Light refracts around you. Particles time, information gets sucked eternally into your center. Once it crosses the event horizon, it is stretched out, not just in material, but in being and presence. Chronology stretches endlessly for light, atoms, people, places, things, against the flattened holographic surface of your massive, ultra-dense body. And is that really what you want? You know, is that really what you want on your art journey? You know, wouldn't you prefer to be calm and peaceful and motivated by, yes, these more unusual things, right? Which is only, that's just a cultural preoccupation. That's a cultural problem, right? Like, it's only a current cultural, societal problem that people tend to be less interested in being motivated by joy, right? I'm a weirdo. I prefer to be motivated by deep, profound peace and ecstatic union with the things that I'm doing and with the world around me, right? I'm weird that way. And I understand that what most people prefer, what most people like better, is to be motivated by self-hatred and self-loathing and comparing themselves to unrealistic expectations that they have based on their blind assessment of what they think other people are like and what their lives are like. I understand that that's what people prefer, right? Because obviously they wouldn't do it if they didn't prefer that. But I do find it a little unusual. I personally find it a little unusual that people wouldn't rather be drowning in positive emotional affect instead of negative emotional affect. And I just wish that maybe there was a little bit more talk about some of the moves, some of the emotional, some of the emotional moves. I don't want to call them techniques because they're not that. They're just like little nudges, little pointers to remind you of the joy that is available right under your nose in what you're doing. It just makes it way easier to do everything, you know? Like the stuff that I'm doing right now, like this sketch that I'm doing right now, it's way easier to be willing to do this and to share this in light of that more joyful mind space than it is in the competitive mind space, right? Because if I was in my competitive mind space, I would never share this, right? I would never, it would already seem absurd and untenable to say, oh God, I'm going to share something that I did in 2 hours flat. Like I've been, you're not going to fool me. I know that something done in 2 hours is not worth sharing. You know, this is the Instagram world. You really should only be sharing stuff that is your absolute best, and your portfolio should have 3 pieces in it, and they should be your absolute best work. And that's the only way you're going to get jobs. Like in my competitive mindset, I would never, ever, 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 ever make a video like this, where I just didn't plan and I just drew and I didn't control the situation, and really sort of however the drawing comes out, I'm going to post it, right? In my competitive mindset, I would never do that. And then I didn't share. And then I let my life be dominated and my choices be dominated by, just sort of neurotic concerns about what my actions mean in the big picture and what other people will think about them, and imagined thoughts about my position in things and what I need to do to either prove something about myself or to maintain something that I already believe about myself or that I think other people believe about me. It's like all of that stuff would just be dominating my life. But instead, in the joyful mind state, it's like, did I have fun doing this drawing? Yes, I have. Am I concerned with if it's good enough, or if it meets the level, or if I should really be sharing something so unsuccessful or unrefined? No, I don't, because something being successful or refined really pales in comparison to the emotional charge of having worked joyfully, right? And having worked peacefully. I've spent enough time investigating both to have, at least for myself, reached a conclusion that the joy of success that comes from only sharing nailed down things and things that I did well on, or finished works that have been done for projects, or things that I think will get me work or that align with what people want to see or the level that people expect from me. The amount of joy that comes from that is short enough and fleeting enough and insubstantial enough that it really pales in comparison to the satisfaction and joy that comes from making a different choice for myself, from deciding to live my own way. It can't measure up to the joy of not worrying about it so much, about being able to do my favorite thing in the world, making drawings and talking about art and drawings, doing those two favorite things, and that's its own reward. That is justification enough. That is all that it needs. It is self-justifying. It is righteous on its own, and it doesn't need anything else on top of that. And I don't have to worry about what other people think about it, or what it does for me, or whether if what I'm doing is right or wrong, or if my time would have been better spent doing something else. I cannot imagine more boring or uninteresting things to fill my mind with. I really can't. What a slog. And I'm done with it. Let's do a little value shelf for the knuckles. Just darken them down generally. We'll leave a gap, and then let's darken. You know, when you're working from imagination, it's very useful to just add value groups, even if they feel kind of arbitrary, because even if you can't right answer your way to where those value groups should be, right? Even if you don't have some powerful mental map of exactly how the form sits compared with the light, that's going to, like a 3D program, reveal to you where shadow and light and halftone should group. Even if you don't have that, you do know that in the real world that does happen, right? Everything that you look at has some sort of interesting, unique arrangement of value groups. So just fake it, you know, that'll get you halfway there. Just throw something down. And that's what I did that. I've done that for a very long time. And eventually it just became that even though I was faking it, I did start developing a taste for what seemed more believable to me than something else. And in a lot of senses, that is enough, and really all you can expect from yourself at a certain point when you're making things up. So you notice that I haven't done the head yet, even though that would be the hardest part, should be the most interesting part of this drawing. And that's actually not ideally how I would like to work. What it is a symptom of a problem that I wanted to correct for myself for a long time. I did and this is pretty common, a lot of artists go through this. I went through a very long period where I really only drew heads. And even when I did a sketch like this, I would lay it out and then I would render and draw the head. And then I never quite found a reason to draw the rest of the picture and finish it. So I would just do a bunch of unfinished, incomplete ideas. And that started to frustrate me after a while. So a long time ago, I said, all right, I'm going to work backwards then to correct this. I'm going to, whenever I do a sketch, if my wits are about me, instead of going into the head first, I'm going to try to do everything else first. And the idea was I would have energy then for the things that I never quite got to, usually, like hands, arms, bodies, things like that. I would have energy for them early on in the sketch since I was doing them first now. And then if I got good results on those things, it would sit there and then it would motivate me to only do the head better, which, you know, naturally a face and a head is usually the most interesting and best part anyway. And then what would happen is that they would feed off of each other. So I'd want to do a better head to earn the good body that I did. And the inverse would go as well. Once I did the head, because most of the body had already been worked on, if things started to fall apart in comparison with the head, I would just want to go back in and make corrections because I'm like, well, it's so close now. You know, I've got a general pass of everything on the body and I got a good head. So why am I just going to let it? It seemed more difficult than to just let it slip and not have a nice complete statement. And I did that for a long time, long enough that now that's how I naturally draw. Now that tends to be my normal process. Actually, I did that overcorrection for long enough that I actually never balanced out and went the other way. I don't know if it's really that big of a problem. Maybe it is for something like recording something while you draw it, because drawings really look like this can never be shown until you put the head on it, right? Like people will accept something that's a very rough everything else, even if just the head is done, right? So that can be grappled with by people, but it's very hard to get an audience to react to like everything else done, but the head is missing. So maybe for recording things, it is not ideal, but yeah, that aside, I actually wound up doing that correction long enough that that's just how I draw now. I tend to do most everything but the punchline for as long as I can while I have energy. And then when I'm drained, it's like, well, you know, I have enough practice at heads and have done enough heads that I don't need that much energy and focus to do one. And also, after you've put so much work into everything else and brought the drawing so close to completion, you also get a little burst of energy when all you have left to do is the head. When you go in to do your head, it's like, who cares if I'm tired? You know, this is like the only thing I need to do to make this drawing shareable. I just can't mess it up. So you get a little burst of energy and it makes it a little easier to do the head, even if you're exhausted at the end of the drawing. Overcorrecting for your mistakes is a very useful way to go through your practice. It works for drawing issues as well. Like if you tend to draw legs too long in life drawing, for example, you can go through a period where you draw them too short and then you tend to wind up in the middle. Though the opposite is usually the problem there. It seems very few people draw legs too long when they're drawing figures. Most everybody draws them too short. So a classic way to correct that problem is to draw the legs too long for a while. And then as you do that, you realize, one, you realize that often what you thought was too long, even that still wasn't long enough. Legs could go even longer. And then the other thing that you realize is that the more and more you do that, you sort of automatically integrate it and you start naturally drawing your legs longer. You wind up in the middle space. It's a good practice. You can do that with everything. Draw heads too boxy, draw them too round. Draw hands too spindly, draw them too structurally. Draw them like they're made out of Legos. Finish too many things? Or, only do 5 drawings a year? Can't get into sketching? Only sketch for a month. Sketch too much, never finish anything? Only finish something. Only finish things for a month. So you can see I'm able to get a general value statement for this whole drawing down pretty quickly. I mean, you see what pretty quickly is, an hour and a half so far, and it still looks pretty rough. But that's pretty quick compared to how long drawings actually take. How's that for a lesson from a real-time video? How long it actually takes someone who has, 16 years of focused drawing experience, how long it takes them to still, after all that experience, how long it takes them to do a drawing. It takes a long time. It's not fast work. It can be done fast, but that's real nerve-wracking and really only for, I try to only do that out of necessity, Yeah, let's really punch some of these shadow shapes. Punching those dark, true shadow shapes gives us a little more room in the halftone. To separate things out. And let's say that when we go up here, this is all going into a vertical plane. And then since this would be really in the cast shadow, we'll have the bottom be darker. And then as we crawl up this transmutated iliac crest, we'll lighten it up because it's getting reflected light from the leg underneath. And then we'll give it a hot core shadow. These steps would feel much nicer for me personally on a sharp paper. Pressing it into these rough papers, it feels softer than I would like right now, but I also would have needed to spend like 7 hours on this drawing to make an overall statement of values on a sharp paper. Unlike this, where I have an overall statement of values in an hour and a half. It's always good to pick a place on your drawing where you're just going to press as hard as you can. So I'll just do it right here in this crease. Always very good to just put down the blackest black that you can get so that you can remember what that actually looks like and be like, oh, I'm very light everywhere. So it's traditionally called a dark accent. So I'm just going to break my pencil tip here actually, because I'm pretty sure that this area where like the foot, the thigh, and then the weird centipede body in the back overlap. Pretty sure that would be, there'd be no light getting in there. So I'm just going to break my lead here to know it's going down as dark as it can. All right, so that's as dark and shiny as it gets. That startled me when it broke because I was like waiting for it to happen for the recording. That's funny. Let the anticipation build up. So now that sets sort of the overall value key. It's like, that's really the darkest dark there, right? And I did that to make a point. I wouldn't actually, on a real drawing, I wouldn't go until I broke the lead, because it did leave like a shiny embossment in that area. I would just linger there for a while and press pretty hard and be reasonably sure that that's as dark as it's going to get. But that just takes a little longer. That's why I broke it for this video, because if I'm pressing hard enough to break it, that guarantees like, all right, right away, you know, it's as dark as it gets. But if I had wanted to do it slower, I would have needed to do pass, 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 and just been sitting there recording it for a while. All right, I need to do a lot of work. The legs are like, it's okay. I need to do a lot of work in the torso area. That's the big bummer right now. And of course the head. All right, so for this big torso area, I'm just going to look for some sort of overall value moves I can make. So maybe I'll have let's turn some planes on this. So let's have like almost like an abdominal design here. Not taking over the striations that are going across, but maybe just kind of getting the idea that like it's flatter right in the middle, it turns slightly away, then it goes flat again, and then it turns away, kind of the way that regular abs do, where there's the abdominal wall in the center of the side to side width of the torso, and then as you go out to the edges, the abs stop and you get the external obliques instead. So I'm swiping that value pattern, I'm just not swiping the details. Let's see if we can work that. Also look for regions in between these weird striations to make some darker, make some lighter. Getting some sort of alternating value pattern here. That's making it look like some have deep furrows between them. I'm going to try to soften the transition on the underside of each of these, try to make them roll. Whoop, got distracted. Back down on these legs. I'm really stuck at the bottom of this drawing. Transition between multiple arms always difficult to design. Very easy to just make them feel collaged together, like you copy pasted photos of two different arms and shoved them together instead of like there's any kind of meaty interaction between them. All right, I should probably get to the head, right? But here's the thing. If I do the head, whenever it's done or good enough, I will be like, all right, well, screw everything else and I can just kind of get out of here whenever I want. And that's fine, but if I can bear it at all, if I hold off, I can't leave. I can't say I'm done. I can't give up. So I can force myself to do work on other areas that I might otherwise quit on, like all of the frickin' hands that I sketched in, if I just refrain from doing the head. It's amazing how strong the psychological pull is that you just can't think the thing is done if you haven't touched the head at all. No one's going to want to see 4 hands and a body and no head. No, it's not actually the case. It just feels that way. And that's enough to make it a tool to get through things. This paper is pretty inclined to smudging. Even with a piece of paper under my hand, there's a lot of smudging going on. I find my sharp papers are less inclined to do that. Core shadow, cast shadow, reflected light. I just try to hit those things over and over again as I do these. That's the fast road to a finished look, because it immediately communicates form. Form is the magic word, as we've said. That's the 1-syllable word that you've got to be obsessed with. Form, form, form. Oh, I can feel it. I can feel the hand cramp coming in. It's saying, stop working, Steven. This video was a bad idea. Just give up. Go have a sandwich. I can't. I gotta keep going. I gotta make my puppies proud. All right, that's a hand down. Simplified, always simplified, but that's all we can do in this tight of a time frame. You can still use a blending stump on this kind of paper. I'm just going to tend not to here because as I've said, the point of using a paper like this for a faster piece is that it keeps everything sort of soft and running together. For me, that's the point. And if I introduce the blending stump, and in this world of softness have a whole other level of like really soft that really you can't imagine until you see an actual blending stump stroke on this sheet. If I introduce that, it's going to change the hierarchy of everything that I've done. And the stuff that I thought was sharp will look even sharper and perhaps too sharp. And stuff that I thought was soft will look too sharp by comparison to the new softest edges. So I will just veer on the side of caution and keep them out of this drawing. Now let's finally crawl up to the head. And I want to do it without spending a little time doing this interstitial tissue. Oh God, I'm not gonna go over here and do this hand. Oh, let's just do some of the iconic shapes here. Ah, the benefits of having drawn 1 billion hands. Emergency hands. Knock them out quick. Try not to worry too much about them. Cool. And now let's see. Let's throw a little general value over this big chest area, just because it's all getting a little light. It's all reading a little high value right now. All right, let's just sketch in here some indication of what we want to do for this head. And we will do this with, we have to sharpen another pencil. No, I'll just use this one. All right, I am going to sharpen. I'm going to sharpen for 1 second here. I'm just going to pass values instead of trying to do a very schematic layout of this thing's face. Will it have a face? You know, I wish that I drew like happy harbor seals and smiling chameleons and old friends getting coffee together at coffee shops, but this is the only stuff that comes out. What is inside of me? So I'm trying to keep this very soft. I'm trying to sketch something that just has an interesting overall arrangement of light and dark. That way I don't have to do much in the way of mapping out lines and structures. It would always benefit from that, of course, but for the sake of me not being at my desk forever today, it can feel unified with the rest of the image, which has soft indications of light and shadow. It can feel unified with the rest of that sooner. Giving him a very, instead of going for like, he has sort of the skeletal cheekbones and eye sockets, but instead of going for the skeletal mouth, I want to see if I can try to give him a very human mouth. Just do something a little weird. The more uncomfortable and awkward, the better, I say. The good thing about even beasts having lips is that I think it implies psychologically that they can still talk. Like they will speak to you in English. Dinosaur mouths or skull mouths, it's like you look at that and it's really, you know, this thing ain't going to be saying anything. Or if it does, it's going to look very weird and unbelievable. Something that's all gums or teeth is no tongue, no lips, is to me it reads more as a wraith. There's no conversation to be had with this creature. But something that has lips has them for a reason. It's going to make sounds. It's going to produce different vocals and be able to give a performance. You know what always makes me think about that is Ultron from the second Avengers movie, Age of Ultron. If you've ever seen the design drawings for Ultron, Ryan Meinerding, the designer who designed him, went to great lengths to give him detailed robotic lips so that he could perform and be sophisticated while not looking like goofy. It was a really hard design challenge to give Ultron robot artificial metal lips that didn't look silly. And I think Ryan achieved it. It's a pretty great job. And it works, and you sort of take it for granted when you watch the movie that this completely CGI robot character has the range of expression and micro expressions as well, little downturns on the corners of lips and eyelids flaring and rising and lowering and covering parts of the eye and things like that. And yeah, all similar things going on in lips. It's pretty amazing that digital maquette has the level of detail and functionality implied in its visuals necessary to capture the sophisticated performance of the actor who actually did the mocap and facial capture for that performance. Just think about it. What if you needed a T-Rex to emote like that? Well, you'd only have some eyebrows and the jaw going to work with, and that's a very different kind of performance. All right, that's some basis for a head. So hopefully you can, from that, get what I was talking about before, right? The head definitely makes this feel like it's a thing now, and it really does. I mean, at least for me, for the viewer, of course, we can always expect the most sophisticated, demanding viewer who, I want to see finished things. I can tell that this isn't finished. Come now, come chap. You call yourself an artist. But for me, once that head is in there and its general statement is in there, it's kind of like, yeah, I can kind of just show it at any time and someone will get the idea and they'll be like, oh, cool, Steven, whatever, hey, you want to go to Chick-fil-A or what? And stuff like that. So I would, I find great benefit in sort of holding off on the head and doing everything else first. Trying to get when you start a new drawing, when you start a sketch, you kind of have like a certain pool of nervous energy for it, that once that pool runs out, you're gonna kind of lean instead into the space of like, all right, when can I say I'm done here? No, I'm really not into it anymore. Your nervous energy kind of goes away. And then you're really just waiting for your opportunity to clock out, And it's nice to dump. The nervous energy is useful, right? Because it's nervous, so it's highly energetic and it can get a lot done. So it's nice to dump most of that nervous energy into the stuff that you would normally skip and then let your not nervous energy, just the energy of duty, do the stuff that's easier, that it's going to do anyway, right? You're always going to have the duty energy for the head. So it's better to save, in my opinion, it's better to save your nervous energy for the stuff you might indeed not do, and then let the dutiful energy do the stuff you're going to do anyway, like the head. I guess this just looks like a demon or the devil, right? That's always what, if I have no plan, this stuff always just comes out. I was doing a stream on the YouTube, I don't know, a couple weeks ago or something like that, and someone in the chat, I forget who, dropped the line, what was it? It's actually really cool to draw the devil, and that cracked me up. That's become a bit of an inside joke around the house now. When my wife goes over to my drawing board and sees what I'm working on, she'll be like, it's actually really cool to draw the devil. Oh man, this stuff is silly. You should know that every time I sit down to draw, I'm like, yeah, let's draw like a, wow, like a utopia. Like, what's it going to look like when there's flying cars? That's always my plan when I sit down to draw. And then, nope, the devil. Or I'm like, oh man, let's draw like a brave adventurer, and he's going through the woods with his dog, and the dog's like, he's just as ragtag as the adventurer. You know, they've both been on so many adventures. No, the devil. Guess just the devil came out. Or it's like, what if it's like a really like contemporary piece? It's like a chef in the back of the restaurant that he operates in, and he's giving orders to all of the secondary chefs, and they're all like at attention like soldiers. They're so brave. They want to follow his directions. They want to serve incredible food. No, it's the devil. It's a drawing of the devil instead. Every time. All right, let's give these horns some texture. Horns are a rough thing to leave for the end of a drawing. I shouldn't have done that. I'll make this mistake because I can already tell I don't have time to avoid it. But horns are like really hard to make look interesting, actually. Horns are really hard to make look interesting, so to do them fast, it's usually never good. They get really generic and uninteresting. Because horns are incredible. You know, if you look at real horns, like the horns of goats and rams and things like that, they're impossible. They're just impossible. They're so impossibly specific. They're crazy looking. They just look absolutely nuts. They're like these beautiful fractal corkscrews that are spiraling, but they're not going in one direction. They're spiraling around an invisible middle axis while moving backwards in space and then forwards in space and wrapping around the animals' heads. It's just like, why do we even try, you know? Yeah, they're just so beautiful. Definitely one of the entries in great moments in the history of form. I really have to make that video someday. That's a video I've wanted to make for a long time. I'll just call it Great Moments in the History of Form, and it'll be a slideshow of like pig's feet and goat's horns and a cuttlefish tentacles, and just me in the corner going, wow. Cool. Let's look at the next one. That's it. That's really it. Oh man, I got to make that video because, yeah, there's really just nature is, you know, as the memes say, nature is lit, right? That's really it's not just lit, it's intensely lit, and it is a brutal education every time in how utterly uninteresting our designs are. Really, dogs? Really? You're going to bark now, right at the end of my podcast. Right at the end of my podcast. Trying to roll around on this guy's head. All right, so we're almost we're getting there, and I'm getting pretty tired, and I could stop being a purist and just break this up into a couple sessions and still have it be real time. But I did want to see how feasible it was to just sit for 2 to 3 hours every now and then and get a real-time video out. So I do kind of want to keep it pure, because I'm interested in this as a way to do a video if I am down in videos, you know, if I've been busy and I haven't been able to get ahead, which is the case right now. I was wondering, like, well, if I don't have a video in the hole, can I make one in one fell swoop? A few hours, so I would like to try that. Oh, hi, puppy. All right, so let's see. Maybe we'll get lucky here and we can run some pretty interesting graphic shapes down this horn in one go. Maybe we don't have time to move them towards us and away from us in the most beautiful way like nature does. But a dramatic shadow shape might be useful enough of a base. Not a shadow shape, like a graphic shape. I'm actually imagining that or interpreting that as like a furrow running down the middle of the horn. I'm at the point in this drawing where my mind is starting to fantasize, like, what will I do once I stop drawing? Maybe I'll see the sun. Throw a ball for a dog. Maybe I'll replace my thoughts with the words in a book, the beautifully crafted words in a book. Did you ever know that it's the devil? He's everything you don't want to be. Did you ever know that he's the devil? 'Cause he is the beast beneath your feet. Look, you're 2 hours and 15 minutes in. I get to torture you like that. I know you're in for the long haul if you're here for this long. So now you get the worst kind of bull crap. Let's have his head occlude and darken his chest so that it sort of pops that hand off a little better. Like I said at the beginning of this video, if I had to only use one tool forever to finish drawings, it'd be black colored pencils. If some horrible art demon arose from a glistening lamp and said, choose ye only one, all your art forever, only with that. Is that like a pirate genie? Focus, which one will you pick? Yeah, I'll take the colored pencils every time. Gives you just enough range. It lets you go completely to black. It does textural and crisp. It's resistant to smudging, but still smudgeable. Light fast, permanent. I don't though. I do still use graphite pencils though, because outside of hypothetical situations where devious art genies close off entire lifetimes of art supplies to you, the absolutely neurotic amount of value control available with a graphite pencil for the light areas is definitely a pleasure. Definitely a pleasure. Let me turn this upside down for a second. Interesting. Maybe it's better upside down. Sometimes that happens, you know. Just for my have the drawing a little further away from me than usual so that I can have my microphone close, and I was sort of getting annoyed reaching all the way over the drawing to get at the top of the head, so I just flipped it upside down real quick. And let's imply something about this horn. Try to make it different than the other one, so it's going to go, let's have it go thicker and then thinner, I think. Let it have a little bit more variety to its line weight. I'm looking at the shape of the dark graphic I'm putting down itself, and then also the negative shapes that it is making around it in the white areas to the edge of the horn. Oof, that's a stinky little puppy at my feet, I'll tell you that. You know, they're just little dogs. You can't blame them. Sometimes they get a little stinky. Now I'm just following the random edges that I made with my hand to produce some furrows in here. This is a fun way to work through abstract areas upside down, because you need to, it makes you a little bit more mindful about what you're doing, because you need to flip the lighting system. Now you need to visually, what you're looking at, everything that's closer to upwards is going to get the shadow value in this light system. You have to do the opposite of what you've been doing for the whole drawing, so it kind of snaps you back into it. All right, huzzah. Let's just let us just look at these areas that are painfully unfinished, and my hand is cramping and I'm getting tired. Usually I take brief stretching breaks when I draw for this long, 2.5 hours without getting up and going to the bathroom or grabbing a quick handful of trail mix or petting my dogs or something like that. That's pretty rare for me. And I'll usually work for about, on one thing, usually my upward limit is 4 hours. But usually I'm working on more than one thing at a time. So I'll work 4 hours on one thing, another 4 hours on something else. But yeah, within that 4 hours, that'll be my limit on one drawing for most days. Usually within those 4 hours, there's several little breaks to get up and walk around and stretch and rest my hand and things like that. And I say this all the time in this channel, but you should get a timer, and a real timer, one that sits on your desk, not not like a Google timer that you have to have in a computer tab. That's not reliable. You'll always wind up closing it or being too lazy to start and stop it because you need to switch tabs. No, the only answer is to have a timer that sits on your desk, like one of these. That's mine. You should absolutely get a timer because it just makes it so much easier. It's like you can tell yourself, well, you can, look things up and change your music as much as you want. And all you need to do is hit the button before you do that. And that's what I do. So I get up and walk around and stretch as much as I want. And I'll change my music as much as I want. If I want to go look something up or something strikes me that I want to see, I will go do that as much as I want. I won't beat up on myself really. But what I will do with a lot of discipline is I will stop my timer when I go do that thing. And then what that does is that I don't really need to beat up on myself, because seeing the actual amount of time in the timer, on the timer, compared to what the hour is in the day is usually enough to sort of make me be like, okay, geez, I got to start taking today seriously if I want to get the stuff that I need to do done. So you got to get a timer. I tried doing it with Google timers and just website timers for a long time, but if your computer crashes, you lose all of your time, which for us, for artists, you might be drawing for 6, 8, 10, 12 hours in a day. If you need to restart your computer or something like that, you sort of get bummed by that because you're like, oh, well, now the timer is going to be this fake time and I'll need to remember to add 4 hours to it or stuff like that. There's just all these little inconveniences with that will eventually make you stop using it. And there's just nothing inconvenient about having it on your desk, and it's its own little process that runs, and you can do absolutely, it doesn't cross with anything else. Your computer doesn't need to be on, your phone doesn't need to be on. You're not going to accidentally start and stop it when you're changing your music or something like that. It's the way to go. And if you refuse to take my advice on that, don't come crying to me when you can't get your time management under control, when you find out that you're totally delusional about how long it takes to do art, how long it takes you to get tired, things like that. The only way to get good data about that stuff is to use a stopwatch. And it is super useful data. And that is why it seems I have mentioned this about 1 billion times on this channel, and still nobody believes me. No one will buy the stopwatch. Oh my God, please buy a stopwatch. Please, 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 please. And of course it makes record keeping for clients when you're billing by hours. Of course it makes that much easier. Honestly, having tried website timers for long enough to know how unreliable they are, I'm like, man, if I ever hired anyone for per hour work, I wouldn't trust them unless they had a desktop timer. I know that anyone who's just like, oh yeah, I just track my time with by Googling the word stopwatch and then hitting start timer, I know those aren't their real hours. It is absolutely impossible to keep accurate counts with those. All right, I don't know why I put these weird bone spur things coming out at the clavicles. I just don't have enough time to make those reasonably interesting. But there they are, and here we are. And give me a stern look in the eyes and let me know that you're disappointed. All right. I'm gonna sharpen one more time here. Some finishing touches to end this sketch. Let's just do a hard holding line. In the areas that could use it. So as I'm wrapping up here, just putting some bold outlines on this so that it looks like it's holding the forms a little bit more nicely. If you made it all the way to the end of this video, thanks for checking this out. I know that this is kind of niche content to want to see real time a drawing done start to finish, but some people have asked for it. So if you're one of those people, I hope you caught this, and I hope that it was everything that you dreamed of. And you maybe saw that there's really nothing to it but to do it. That's really the truth. There's really nothing to it but to actually sit there and do the drawing. And when you get tired and feel like getting up, just stick with it. And let's see, what else can I say about this? So this is definitely a sketch for me. So I think a lot of beginners have a skewed mental idea of how long things take to do because they're used to seeing sped up things online. So take this as data. It took me 2.5 hours to do this pretty mediocre, unrefined looking sketch, right? So, you know, at least for me, by my standards, if you've been around this channel for a while, you know what like a finish looks like for me, right? So 2.5 hours just to do this. You know, this is very much like a first draft, first attempt, first stab. Like I explained earlier, the most this would do for me most likely is that this would just be basically equivalent to a thumbnail for me, where I'd be like, all right, well, now I know if I like this idea or what part of this idea is actually interesting to me, right? Maybe it's the horns, maybe it's the wide middle area, maybe it's the crossing of the legs. I would pick one of those things from this, and then I would basically forget I ever did this drawing. And then I would redo it, composing just for that element that it turns out was really the whole point of the drawing. So yeah, if you're a beginner, and you have a skewed look, a skewed view of how long it takes to do drawings, yeah, 2.5 hours is not enough time for me to do anything super nice, right? This is definitely not up to the level of the stuff that I usually like to share in public. I will, for reasons that we described earlier. But yeah, normally anything that I put on here or that I share online is usually, I've spent usually 4 hours on it or something like that at least. And really a lot of the stuff that you see is considerably more than that. I've spent 20, 30, 40 hours on it. Some things have gone way higher than that, going into the hundreds of hours. I wish I had the drawing I was doing this morning within arm's reach, but yeah, I have another drawing going that I was working on today before sitting down to do this one. That one has probably 20 hours in it so far, maybe, and will wind up being in the 30 to 40 hour territory for when it's done. So yeah, 2.5 hours is really not enough time for me to do anything beyond a really rudimentary exploration like this that can't get quite refined. So I've been doing this for a long time, and I have a lot of experience just sitting down and sketching and rendering and finishing. I have a lot of experience rendering and finishing. I can do it quite fast. So even for me, this is not nearly enough time, and I have no realistic expectations of achieving any of the nice rendering or finish that I know I can do, and I'm quite efficient at in that time frame. So if you as a beginner are getting frustrated with yourself or disappointed in yourself after an hour, 2 hours, you are really just, you got to understand that you really just have completely off expectations. The things that you've seen online, not seeing peers and professionals draw for real, like right next to you in the reality of how this stuff gets made, has just warped your perception. And understandably so. There's almost nothing you can do about it. It's impossible to resist if all you've ever seen is super sped up drawings of people drawing at 600, 800%. And that is really how much drawing videos get sped up. A lot of people think when they look at a sped up drawing video that, oh, maybe this is like 2x or 3x, 4x, 5x. They would never imagine the truth. For example, a lot of my drawing videos, when I speed them up in my video editing program, they're being sped up 800 to 1,100%, like much, much, much faster than you would expect. So of course that's going to warp your perception and make it difficult to imagine how long this stuff actually takes. So you need to manage that, you need to mitigate that, and you need to accept that pretty early so that you can start spending 100 hours on stuff. You need to get it out of your head that that's a big deal or worrisome or something to be afraid of or to avoid or anything like that. It's not, and there's great freedom in being able to spend that long on something, because once you are spending that long on something or more, none of these numbers are solid, right? You can be the kind of artist who spends 1,000 hours on the average picture, right? There's famous artists who have spent lifetimes on single pictures, right? They've just formulated some very interesting, unique artistic practice where they work on one project for their whole life, and that's totally valid. So none of these numbers are, even the numbers I'm spitting out now, are totally flexible. But you just got to realize that there's a ton of freedom in being able to spend a long time on things, because then being able to spend a long time on things means that you have the freedom to investigate every kind of drawing effect. And until you've investigated those effects, you don't actually know what you do and don't like to do, right? I mean, you've never tried it, so you don't know if you're the kind of person who could actually jive through a drawing focusing on finish and surface or texture, or if you really need to be the kind of person who's operating only in quick sketch and just concerned with the initial impression and things like that. So don't be afraid of spending a super long time on things. There's a lot of freedom there. I find a lot of freedom there, and it's relaxing, you know. And it's a different mode of work to be spending hours and hours, let's say, darkening things or filling in areas or flattening things. Those are very different kinds of work. You know, when I'm on a longer drawing, there'll be whole sessions where I don't actually draw anything, right? I'm just darkening things, making corrections, filling in areas that need filling, flatting shapes. I'll spend the occasional 3-hour session in the morning when I'm doing my own stuff, and I don't draw anything. I only do those things, right? And even then, sometimes I come back the next day and that area that I spent 3 hours darkening, I'll be like, no, it could still be a little darker, and I'll do another 3-hour session to painstakingly darken it. And that's fine. That's just a different kind of drawing. That's a kind of that's a different mode to be in. And at this point, I find a lot of joy in those moments. I don't find them aggravating anymore, you know, as I've gotten a little older and mellowed out. And the reward, if you're able to do them, is that, well, you can achieve finish, and often a finish that most people find sort of perplexing and not everybody knows how to get to. So there's a reason that there's a reason that level of finish is desirable and a sign of professionalism, right? It's actually not easy at all to get there. And again, it's not, to a certain extent, it's a function of process, you know, where you gate yourself, what you're going to do when to even allow you to spend 100 hours on things. If you're interested in that, maybe you should try out one of my summer workshops where I'll talk about that stuff. How the hell do you actually plan a drawing so that you can spend 100 hours on it? And but beyond that, it's literally just a function of being willing to do it. Like, you just got to have the gall to be like, screw it, I'm going to do it. You know, most people are just unwilling. They will find every reason to not do it instead of find every reason to do it. And that's the biggest problem of all. The process stuff is pretty quick stuff that, you know, someone like me, I can explain to you what you need to watch out for in like an hour, you know, but the real magic is, are you actually willing to do it? Will you actually commit and sit down and do the 100-hour drawing? Or will you instead invest all of your creative energy in coming up with ever more ingenious excuses? Will you find beautiful, sophisticated, novel quality excuses to not sit down and do the drawing? I'm not ready. If I do this, it'll shatter all the expectations of the people who know and love me, and they'll know that I'm a fraud, that I'm not really that person, that I'm not a finisher. I'm a person who just learns forever, and I really can't let my mother see that side of me. And oh my God, what would my friends say? My friends know I'm not that guy. I spent so much time with all of my art friends in college telling them like, well, I'm a sketcher. I only sketch. I never finish things. I can't just show up with finished things now. They'll know that that's not me. Stop it. Stop doing all of that stuff to yourself. You're poisoning your practice and you're poisoning your heart, and nobody cares. Absolutely nobody cares. So don't waste your time making up those incredibly creative lifetime melodrama level reasons to not do the drawing. You just need to find a reason to sit there and actually spend 100 hours on the drawing. That's the real trick. And you should try it. You should try it if you've never tried it. You might surprise yourself. You might shock yourself. Actually, you might find yourself ever more willing to invest huge amounts of time into very intense projects. And that would become very exciting for you after a while. And God, that would be really good, because that's how good work gets done. And then you could become a pro. Fun. All right. I'm exhausted. I'm going to leave this here. Let's wrap it up by peeling the tape. And a little smudgy all around here, but it's not, I don't need it to be perfect. I'll let the smudges sit since it's just a sketch. A couple more holding lines. Sorry, I always got to be a little quiet for these. These require really the most dexterity of anything that you do in a drawing, which is not a lot. It's still less dexterity than you need to sign your name, so. Cool. Let's peel some tape and get out of here. Wait a second. Is this the right order? I just forget what order I put this stuff down in. All right. Some clean top and bottom edges. Always do a little bit to make it feel like a real drawing. I need to go drink some water. Thanks for drawing today.